People think self-awareness is just about knowing your strength and weakness. But self-awareness is much deeper than that. In the world now where it's all about well-being, self-development, self-improvement, we're in a space where self-awareness becomes a hot topic. But because it is not used in a correct context, or people understanding what actual self-awareness means and how to actually practice it, it can be thrown off its original meaning and also losing its value. So, there are also people who think that self-awareness is all about being mindful and overthinking about themselves, but that is more of being very self-conscious. And so here are 10 things that people get wrong about self-awareness. Number 1, self-awareness is not the same as overthinking. Thinking about yourself all day, every day does not make you understand yourself well, because it depends on the quality of the thoughts, the context of the thoughts, and what is your intention of thinking about yourself. So we fall into the trap where we are constantly thinking about what we were saying, how did the other person perceive it, but that is more of you spiraling into thoughts about what is happening that is being interpreted in different ways but may not be the real truth. So self-awareness is not just because you think that, oh, I'm really overthinking about myself, about what I say, about what I do, I am self-aware. It's more of you're aware that this is happening to you, but it's not giving you the meaning that will benefit you. So the whole purpose of self-awareness is whether it helps you to understand your patterns, to understand why you do the things that you do. Most people would just spit out and say, I have self-awareness because I know why I say that. Knowing and understanding are completely different things. Knowing is just the surface level of you know what you just said to the other person, but you did not know that because you said that, it could have made the other person feel a specific way. So that is the understanding, and on a deeper level, it's what made you say the thing that you just said. Again, it can look like overthinking, but it is very strategic thinking in terms of you are thinking about yourself, but with intention of using it for the greater good. Number 2, knowing your flaws is not enough. So real self-awareness is not just saying that, yeah, I know I'm like this, I know that I'm bad at this, I know that this is my weakness. It's more on noticing that why this pattern is happening for you, why do you choose to respond in that specific way or react in a specific way, and ultimately, which is the most difficult that we are all working towards, is because you spot the pattern, how are you going to take responsibility to overcome it? What actions are you going to take to mitigate or to counter that pattern? Noticing your pattern is one thing. Taking action after knowing your pattern is that true self-awareness. Number 3, being honest with yourself can feel extremely uncomfortable. It makes you feel like you want to crawl out from your skin, because self-awareness not necessarily makes everybody feel empowered. In fact, it kind of burns you off before it helps you to grow. So one thing about being honest with yourself is knowing that the moment you feel the discomfort, you know that there's some truth to it and that you are supposed to take actions for it, whatever it may be. Honesty doesn't feel empowering because most of us don't like to face the truth because it stings, it hurts. But when you actually take a step back and reflect on your discomfort and embracing the emotion itself, it kind of gives you data point on whether or not you should really value this as a truth, or maybe you just feel misunderstood. It may not be entirely the truth for you, but it is still being honest with yourself on how you're going to deal with this discomfort. So a lot of times, honesty bruises our ego, but it helps us to grow. Therefore, it feels extremely uncomfortable. Number 4, you can be emotionally intelligent and still lacks self-awareness. So this kind of goes against the infamous emotional intelligence quadrant, where you have, the 4 parts: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. So the other half of the emotional intelligence quadrant requires you to be very much in tune with who you are, what you feel, at the same time knowing how to regulate or manage yourself out of it, right? If you take the emotional intelligence test, it is all over the place. There are free and paid version. The paid version gives you an in-depth analysis. When you do the test, you will start realizing that, hey, I can be very socially aware and I have great relationship with people. I know how to make people feel good, but you may not be very aware with yourself, with your own being. So it doesn't mean that if you score very high emotional intelligence, it means that you are self-aware. You could be lacking in that particular quadrant. So this is why they call the people pleasers, right? They are very good at fulfilling others. They are very good at catching other people's motives and knowing how to make them feel comfortable. But when it goes back to themselves, when they get home, they don't know how to comfort themselves because they are not self-aware or they lack in terms of the self-management portion. Number 5, your trigger reveals more than just the intention. So I think trigger is very much a triggering thing to talk about because nobody likes to be triggered. Nobody likes to be in a place where they are under pressure, stress, unless they seek for it. So like for example, if it's a stress that you cause on yourself intentionally, like for example, going for a hard workout, lifting your PR weights, going above and beyond, doing something extremely uncomfortable but at your own will, your body will perceive the discomfort or stress in a different way. But when you are going through stress that you didn't ask for, like for example, maybe something happened to your loved ones, you lost something very important, those kind of stress that you are not prepared for, it kind of reveals your trigger point. And so what I'm trying to say here is who we want to be matters, but it's like you having goals. I want to be a more peaceful person. I want to be a high performer. I want to earn a certain amount of money. Like your goals or who you want to be, your principle matters, but how you react under stress often shows what are things that needs to be healed. So trigger points, you should welcome them. It's hard for me to say this because I'm also dealing with my own trigger points, is that trigger points are there for you to, it kind of signify to you what kind of things still is wounded and needs healing. They say that often when we get triggered and we react in a way where it's not favorable, we react in a place where we were young back then as a child. That's when we first got that trigger and we would feel that way over again. It's like maybe when you were 10 years old, you felt like somebody abandoned you or spoke to you in a specific way that made you feel uncomfortable. And that was you when you were 10 years old. So when this happened again in your adult life, it brings you back to your reaction when you were 10 years old. Number 6, this is one of the most talked about, most important. Self-awareness does not automatically mean it created change, or it does not mean that it creates change. So essentially, you can be self-aware, but if you do not take action, again, it does not cause any change. There's no development, there's no improvement. That's the meaning of change. Insights from self-awareness can be very powerful, but if it comes without action, it is just data without any plan or any execution. So even plan itself is not enough. It's the execution. Means you have insight, but there is no result. So a concrete example, people who have been taking the personality test, so MBTI, right? It's what I've been talking about. When you take the MBTI assessment, you get the result and then you find out that you are INFP, for example, right? Knowing that you have your strength, but you also have areas that you need to improve. Like for example, INFPs, they avoid conflict, they are dreamers, they may not necessarily stick to a routine, or it's very hard on making things work. They don't like to boss around. They are less assertive, and maybe they're in an environment where they need to be. And so they can take the assessment and be very aware of that. Okay, yes, I don't like direct confrontation. I don't like to have honest conversation because it's uncomfortable. I cannot give orders because it makes me feel like I am uncomfortable being called bossy. Things like that. They're aware that that is them. And then it becomes stuck there because they're like, but this is me, and therefore it cannot be changed. So self-awareness does not automatically create change. It means that in order for change to take place, you need to take action from the inside. Number 7, now this is a touchy one. Just like empathy can be performative, some people use self-awareness as a performance. So what do I mean? For example, this looks like someone that is able to beautifully describe how they are, who they are, how many personality tests they have taken, and they will portray themselves as they know themselves very, very well, but unconsciously, or maybe they close one eye, they are still repeating their harmful patterns. I have been there before where, because psychology, personality, it's a passion of mine, right? And so I automatically would have this effect where, because I study so much about it, I should be able to know myself very well and be able to psychoanalyze myself without professional help or experts, right? And so if you ask me to describe my personality, I can do that 360, and even how people perceive me, I can do that, right? But if I'm not consciously thinking about or reflecting about what I've been doing on a day-to-day, how people are being treated by me, and reflecting on the things that I've said, what kind of impact that I've made, and maybe when people give me 360 feedback, I don't consciously reflect on it, right? And try to catch if I'm still creating a pattern that I may be oblivious about, that makes it look like I know myself, but I actually don't know myself. So it's not the authentic part of self-awareness. So self-awareness becomes like a performance. Like, people think that you are very self-aware, but deep down in certain aspects of your life, you are not really self-aware. Number 8, your blind spots are part of self-awareness too. So this kind of links back to self-awareness. It's not just about knowing your strength. Your blind spot is, I think in depth psychology, MBTI, we learn that cognitive function, right? Blind spot is way deeper than your weakness. At least weakness, you are aware of it. At least you know that, okay, I am not very present moment person. I'm always in my head thinking about the future. That is probably my weakness. Meaning, when I look at a lot of details, it overwhelms me, my weakness. Some people are very good at it. They embrace details. They can really look at it sharply and work their way through details. But some personality types, they just can't, right? So they're aware that it's their weakness. But blind spot is you are not even aware that it's there. So that's the dangerous part about, or the beautiful part about self-awareness, is that you have blind spots that only when maybe other people who have experienced you, or someone that is not in your lens, will be able to see it clearer than you do, because there's no bias. It is objective. It is from the outside point of view. Therefore, I think we can become very, very defensive to blind spot, because it's an area where we are not familiar with. So it can catch us by surprise, by defensiveness. And so these are things that you would defend so quickly, and are often things that you need to examine and be honest with. So this is the difficult part, right? It really depends on who's the one giving you the feedback. You don't want to be the crazy person that is so obsessed with being so self-aware that you take everybody's feedback. So it really depends on who is the person that's giving you the feedback, the intention of the person that's giving you the feedback, and if the person is able to lay out constructively for you, right? Why is this your blind spot, and how is it acting out, so that you can have clarity and hopefully full understanding of why is this your blind spot. So I think studying your blind spot is very valuable, because we often look at our weaknesses, but sometimes the blind spot is the thing that pulls us down more, and especially when the fact that we are oblivious with it, right? Number 9, self-awareness is not self-criticism. Be very careful about this. I know that the space of self-development, sometimes it can get a little bit toxic, where we are just trying to pick apart a person, right? Sometimes instead of just solving a problem, we are psychoanalyzing, dissecting the person, so it can feel very inhumane, very technical. So self-awareness is not self-criticism. It's because you are not picking yourself apart in a heartless way. It's all about seeing yourself clearly without any shame. It's just embracing, accepting so that you can move on, not accepting so that everybody needs to embrace you the way you are. It's not about that. It's the intention behind why are you trying to pursue self-awareness. Give you feedback for you to be more self-aware. It's not criticism. You kind of need to see it clearly without shame. And I know that it's easier said than done, but there's a reason why this advice is out there, because feedback is not easy. The champions are the ones who treat feedback as their breakfast. I think I've probably butchered that quote, but you get my point. People who actually develop themselves are the ones that are very open, very curious, and is always improvising themselves. They are very adaptable. So I wouldn't say that human beings, we wouldn't be defensive, we wouldn't be uncomfortable. Of course, all this comes into the part and parcel of growth and development, right? And so I think it's the reframing that helps. So maybe first think about why you are seeing it with shame, and then try to reframe yourself from there. Sometimes acknowledging it is a good thing rather than avoiding it. Finally, number 10, real self-awareness should make you gentler and more responsible, not high and mighty. So self-awareness, it can be perceived as selfish, as being very obsessed with yourself, but again, it goes back to the intention. And the action, the result, is going to prove if the intention is good in the first place. So when you practice self-awareness, are you more grounded? Are you more humble and intentional with the things that you do? Are you more reactive or more responsive? Like, do you quickly then act on things, or do you take a step back, act on things? Or you can be still work in progress. You might have reacted, but you are faster in terms of bouncing back to what needs to be fixed, so that the greater good can be achieved. So it really goes back to your humility, your intention, and that will show whether you or not you have real self-awareness. So self-awareness is not just about knowing yourself, it's from understanding yourself. So the definition of understanding yourself is being honest enough to see your patterns, mature enough to own them, and brave enough to change them despite what people think. So self-awareness is not just self-analysis for the sake of analysis. It is self-understanding that leads to growth and greater success.